Hello, my name's Barbara Yade, and today I'm going to show you how to make a silver and copper jump ring bangle. Let's take a look at what we'll be making today. This is a sterling silver textured bangle with multiple jump rings on. This would be really nice if you did the jump rings in gold as well. These are larger jump rings, but I'm going to make today's one with smaller ones, but you can choose any shape or size. Let's get started. I have here, this is 1 millimeter of sterling silver round wire. You can use any shaped wire that you like. The end bracelet is going to be a medium bracelet, and I want it to be 160 millimeters long. But I'm going to texture it first and then cut it to length. I'm using a hammer with just a flat edge, and I'm just going to tap along the whole length of the wire. I've now textured my piece of wire. I'm going to measure 160 millimeters in length. I'm now going to use my snips to cut my wire because the wire is quite thin. Got my wire here. Just need to bend it around. Firstly, I want to make sure that both ends of my wire are nice and flat. So I'm just going to get my file, and make both ends nice and flat. I have now filed either end of my bangle to make it nice and straight. And what I want to do is solder this. If you notice, I haven't got a circle yet, which is absolutely fine. We'll round that up to a circle after I've soldered everything. Just going to make sure that these sit nice and neatly together. So I'm just going to manipulate the wire a little bit. There we go. Just needed some solder and some hard solder on this. Now going to put my bangle in some cold water and then pickle it. I have now pickled my bangle. I've got it on my round bangle mandrel. You can use an oval bangle mandrel if you have one, that's absolutely fine. I'm now just going to gently tap my bangle with my rawhide mallet to give myself a nice round shape. I do have a round shape, but it's not very flat. So the next thing I will need to do is get my steel block and flatten the roundness, make it nice and flat. Got my steel block, just going to place my bangle on top and again, gently tap. Just going to flip it over and do the same thing. On the other side. There. I've now got my bangle and I'm going to now make my jump rings to go on to my bangle. For my jump rings, I am using the end of a doming punch. And you can use any kind of doweling rod or former that you've got to hand, anything shape that you want. I'm using 0.8mm copper. And what I'm going to do is wrap a loose end just around my bit of copper there, just to keep it nice and tight. Hold one piece in my hand and just tightly wrap. If you've got a vise, you can do this in a vise, but it works equally well just doing this by hand. And it's always good to wrap more jump rings than you actually need. I'm now going to just push this off and I've got my little jump ring bundle here. What I'm going to do next is, as this is only 0.8 wire, I'm not going to use my saw frame. I'm just going to snip it with my snips and that will give me enough jump rings. So I cut the top off this one here and I'm now just going to snip So now I have all my jump rings snipped and ready to go. What I'm going to do now is put all of my jump rings onto my bangle and then solder them and then I will shape them. So I'm just closing them up first to make sure they're nice and round. I've now got my bangle and I've got my jump rings. I'm going to solder each jump ring onto my bangle. Just going to open it up gently and I've got my 2 flat nose pliers here and slip it on. Now I'm going to close it back. And for this section, I'm going to make sure that my solder seam is out of the way. Just going to use a tiny bit of solder on there. Grab myself a tiny pillion. It's my first one. I'm going to move that out of the way. See if I can put that in pickle. Some hot cold water. I'm going to get my second one now. Do exactly the same thing. Just open it up gently. Hook it on. And close it. Another little piece of solder on there. Again, making sure everything is out of the way. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. Just lift up my bangle. Oops. Slot my jump ring on. Close it up, making sure everything is out of the way. Tiny piece of solder on there. You can see I've added 3. I'm going to keep going. You can add as many as you like to complete your design. I think after I've put the little jump rings on, I'm going to texture and hammer each little jump ring just for a different look to it. I have now put all of my jump rings on to my bangle. I'm going to give them a little bit of an extra texture. So I'm just going to separate each jump ring, hold it onto my steel block. I'm holding it onto the edge like that. I'm just going to gently tap all the way around. Just tap a bit more. Just to give it a tiny bit more of a texture. Going to do that to each one. Going to texture another one, and it is worth noting that there is a stark contrast between your copper and your silver solder. Your silver solder is never going to disappear on a piece of copper. It will always be there. So you can either make your jump rings in silver using silver solder, or make your jump rings in gold using the appropriate gold solder. To complete the bracelet, I would go around and texture the rest of them, and this brings me to the end of the project. Here are our finished pieces, and to clean up, I would put this in a polishing barrel. If you don't have a polishing barrel, you can use a wire brush with some washing up liquid and give it a scrub, and that will give it a nice shine. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Please put what you've made on the Jewelers Academy Facebook group, and I will see you again for another project soon.